So now that we've looked at operators like plus, minus, multiply, divide, all those things, we're now going to look at comparisons, comparison operators. So when we were looking at the operators in the previous lecture, you can kind of see how that would be helpful immediately. Like, it's obvious that especially if you're going to be doing machine learning, you're going to need to know how to do things like adding, multiplying, and that kind of stuff using JavaScript or other languages. However, maybe looking at comparisons, you may think, oh, well, where's that going to be useful to? But actually, they're used all the time. They're very, very helpful. So we're just going to go through a few of them, and I'm going to give you an example just to start with. So let's say, for example, we have less than. And let's say we want to create a program where someone puts in their passport or their driver's license because they want to buy alcohol. And the program can immediately look at their date of birth and say, okay, this is their date of birth. If their age is less than 18 or 21 or whatever, refuse service. But they're used all the time, so it's very important that you get to know how to use comparison operators. Now, for now, the way we're going to be looking at this is using the data type which we went over earlier, which is called a Boolean. You might remember Boolean. The Boolean can either be true or false. So for example, what I'm saying here in this function is simply 1 is equal to 3. So this is the first comparison, equal to, and it's just two equal signs. And this should say false when I run it. So all I'm going to do is click this button because that calls the function and it says false. Fantastic. Because it's basically saying, I'm saying 1 is equal to 3, and that's obviously not true. So it's saying no, that's not true. Whereas if I were to put 3 is equal to 3, of course that's true, because the number 3 is equal to number 3. And so it's saying true. And just to show you, just to make it even clearer, if I were to put, for example, 4 is more than 3, which we'll be going over in a second, more than, well, obviously that's true. But if I were to put 4 is less than 3, it's going to come back with false. So let's go through the examples one at a time. We could say 5 is equal to 1, and it's going to return false. What if we use strings instead? Hi. Hi. And then hello. So these strings are different from each other, so they're not equal to each other. So when we run this, it's false. However, if I change this to hi, and I run it again, it's going to be true, because they're the same thing. They're equal to each other. Now, the next comparison operator on the list is exclamation mark, then the equal sign, and that's saying not equal to. So what do you think is going to happen when we run this? We're asserting that hi is not equal to hi. Well, that's just not true, is it? So it's going to return false. There we go. Whereas if I put something like, I don't know, snake. Well, those two things aren't the same. So snake is not equal to hi, so this is going to return true. Now let's look at some of the others. Obviously, if we do more than or less than with strings, JavaScript is going to get very confused. However, if we move to less than and more than, so let's assert that 5 is less than, and we use this sign, less than 9, well that's true, isn't it? 5 is less than 9, so this is going to return true. Same thing for more than, except this is going to return false. And then finally we have less than or equal to. So basically, if 5 is less than or equal to 9, then this is going to return true, which it should. But if I were to put, for example, 50, well 50 isn't less than or equal to 9. So we're going to get false. Whereas if I put 9, 9 is less than or equal to 9, because it's equal to 9, so it works. True. So those are our comparison operators. What I suggest you do, as always, is just give it a try. Although you may not see completely how useful this is, once we get into a few more of the lectures, you'll see just how often comparison operators are going to be used, not just in JavaScript, in any coding languages. So it's a great idea at this point to get used to them and just feel comfortable with using these basic comparison operators. So have a go, and I'll see you in the next one.